I don't have to do anything. I love when I don't have to do anything. I'm Evan Abrams, but here we are doing something on the Motion Design Hotline. Maybe people understand it's a running gag that we join them in media, whatever we're talking about. I'm Evan Abrams. This is the Motion Design Hotline. I'm joined, as usual, by Kyle Hamerick. Hamerick, how you doing today?
Hey, spectacular. I'll be better when my computer stops being weird, which it started doing like 20 seconds before we went live. So that's my answer.
Yeah, the trick is you want to open 7 apps before you start streaming. If you are watching this, depending on where you're watching it, we can read what you say and say hello to you all. So, hey, Keys. Hey, Cody Bear. Trying to think where the people are at and what's going on. I don't know. There's not a lot of data moving around, but it doesn't matter. We're streaming out there, and we're talking about streams because today's show is actually about streaming. This is our most meta of things. We've seen a lot of chatter over the old wires. What's up, chat? I see you're talking about transparencies. So that's kind of be a big thing that we're talking about today. So, Anuma Corton, you should be seeing a green screen because this is a very meta-textual episode. This is a very behind-the-scenes type of episode that we're getting into. We're usually you see my office, and now you see the artifice of all of this. So, streaming graphics, Kyle, we're talking about those today. Sometimes called broadcast. Sometimes broadcast graphics, right? These are the things what will go over your Twitch streams, your YouTube streams. They have to get loaded into a switcher of some form, and then they get used, right? So
kind of the evolution of broadcast graphics, which obviously still exist for TV, but much like some kid with a laptop can have a lot of the same capabilities that a movie studio used to have 20 years ago. Right. Now everyone can have their own YouTube channel with all kinds of, or whatever other TikToks and whatever you young people are doing these days, right?
Whatever the hip youngsters are into.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really dates this that we're talking about TikTok, when I'm sure in the future times they'll be talking about the cranial stents or whatever. Yeah. But also, hello out there to people on YouTube. Hey there, Theo, what's going on? Hello, Sebek. Hello. So welcome all to this. So if you've ever had to deal with creating streaming graphics, you're trying to pitch a client on this, if you have a brand that wants to get into this kind of thing, then hopefully we will elucidate some ideas for you that will be helpful. We got the green screen behind me because let me give you a little preview of what we are doing today.
Going to be pretty spicy today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, let's start with a simple one. We're going to make some graphics kind of like this, right? Ooh, you should see some beautiful coins falling down in front of our faces. Ow. Oh, I'm trying to eat them, Kyle. Ow. We got to grab those coins.
For everyone else's context, I'm on a bit of a delay just on our own view. So yeah, maybe it should be a running bit that I try to grab the coins that I literally cannot see.
Yeah. They're just slipping through your fingers. You can't get them. But the idea is you're able to trigger that through your switcher, but in order for that to work, you need to have holes, right? You need the alpha channel, the fourth heat that you require to make that work. Speaking of heat, the thing I'll be mostly preparing for you today, spicy wise, is if we come over to the Evans screen, no, that's Kyle's screen. The Evans screen is what we want. Here's me in the hot seat inside of OBS. So this is being done. This is a multi-layered experience that I hope people are able to kind of see here. So I'll just show you when that kind of loads up, hence the green screen behind me. The hot seat, there's like a big explosion, right? So that's kind of the idea that we'll be crafting in here, right? So we've got a kind of multi-layered, multi-part thing going on that you need to send outwards in its various parts and consider in all of its sort of forms and the way that's all going to kind of go together once it all kicks off. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're talking about how to generate these alphas if you don't make them. Kyle's going to be making them with his own bare hands. And that's the show.
These are human hands.
Yeah, he's going to use his human hands to do this. So if you have any questions...
I have bare paws, so I'm going to put on while I do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I really wish I did now.
It's going to be really helpful for a lot of this stuff. So that's the idea that we'll be doing today. I'll be kind of in the hot seat. If you have any questions about any of the stuff you see, let us know in the chat. If you have any other type of questions, you can always get at us using Motion Design Hotline form. Links to that in the description. MotionDesignHotline.com. Yeah, I'll be roasting myself, which is a pretty normal state of affairs for me. That is correct. I'm a pretty self-deprecating person. Except, I don't know. Kyle, you know that I have two voices, but most people don't know that I have a sarcastic voice and a normal voice, and people cannot tell the difference between them. It's it's dangerous for my life and career.
I've learned how.
Yeah, exactly. Subtle people can determine. So, I don't know, Kyle. Should I start? Do you want to start? Where do we want to go here?
I mean, the coins are pretty simple, so I don't know if that's a short little thing. But if I feel like you have a better outline in your head of where you want to go, so sure. I will trust your judgment.
Okay, let's start with yours. We're going to start with yours because that's the simpler version, and let's do that. So, take it away.
All right. So I have this full-on sort of streamer layout that I've designed here. I actually created this a couple years ago for a project I did with Valentina V and a few other people. You can watch this. It's a little sort of horror short film that we actually made for Adobe when Frame.io was joining the fold. And so you can see here in context, I created an actual little video game to go in here as well. But here I've updated it with some of our colors, and you can see that Evan A just tipped 200 Mo coins. So you could absolutely build this sort of thing in After Effects if you were going to have a motion background, or if you were, say, building this for a streamer who is your client and you needed to be able to show them kind of how this is going to actually feel in context. So I'm not going to dive super far into this, but I did want to point out a thing or two here where you could build this with mock-up content in here and then actually just export this as a still or a short video loop itself. One thing we'll be talking about a decent amount today is that you are going to have to kind of think about building this stuff, but then exporting it in layers. So if I were exporting just a still of this background, but I'd kind of mocked this up, then I'd kind of strip this back, get rid of these coins, get rid of the actual chat itself here as well. So you just have the panel. And then like I have this panel right here that's just the game playback, but I would want to knock a hole through this whole thing to give us the alpha channel that we're going to be looking at, right? And one of the easiest ways to do that, because you can see my background is made up of quite a few layers down here. So instead of like getting super convoluted with a bunch of pre-comps and mats and stuff, just take advantage of your blending modes here. And the Silhouette Alpha blending mode, just punch a hole through everything. Yeah. And so now, you've got a nice hole that you can punch there. You do the same thing with the talent overlay right there. And so then you could export this either as a video file or an image, and now you've got the holes that you need.
And so I'll say this, like, OBS and Streamlabs, StreamYards.
Yep. There's Streamlabs OBS also, which is unaffiliated with OBS. They sort of built on top. There's a lot of products.
Right. We got your Wirecasts. There's a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But many of them, I will say, main complaint, they're pretty imprecise when it comes to sizing elements.
Yeah.
This is why we use this kind of frame around us and why it is useful to have those, because dragging those little corners around can be a bother, right?
Yeah.
And having a frame will save you from the nasty pixel rips that may happen in those 1 pixel margins. So just getting that out of the way design-wise, why we want to be doing that.
Yeah. And also so that you can have all kinds of like fancy neon glow business. I've got my resolution turned down here, but there we go. We got some nice little multi-part frame going on here with glows. That is a
Winamp vibe.
Yeah. Very neon aesthetic here. So the thing that I was going to get into, this is not super complex, but a lot of these streamer graphics aren't, because you end up being kind of limited by what the platform is going to take. So you need to kind of think sometimes about what you can do with, things that aren't going to be maybe super long. The files aren't going to be super big in terms of file size. but you can kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. So here I've just got a super simple little rotating coin here. And this is rotating in 3D. It's extruded here. I'm using the Cinema 4D engine because I built this a couple years ago. I'd probably use the advanced 3D now, but I'm not going to change it because sometimes that'll make the look be different. But this is pretty simple. It's just an extruded circle for the inside, an extruded circle for the outside that's just stroked, and then some little star elements in the middle. They're all extruded a bit so that you can, sort of slightly different depths so that they just show through or whatever. And then it's just rotating. And one thing that I will point out, this is pretty simple, but a lot of people don't realize this at the beginning. When you want something to be a perfect loop, you don't put your last keyframe at the end of your composition here, because then you're going to end up with 2 frames of that. So you actually want to take that last keyframe that kind of comes back and makes this look like a perfect loop, and you push it 1 frame beyond that. And that way, when it actually loops back to that first frame, that way you're getting da, 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 and then you're back to the beginning. See? So you always want to take that last one, push it 1 more.
Right. So maybe now's a good time to cut in and talk about your formatting limitations, right? So
yeah.
Let's say this is going to go on Twitch. Now, our current time of recording, August 13th, 2024, right? Anyway, that's the year, right?
2024.
The year was 2024. If you were, say, creating a kind of GIF for use as a Twitch emote, an animated little thing, there's really specific frame counts that are allowed. Right. And so if I will only have 60 frames counting from frame 0. If the 0 is the frame, you've got 59 other ones, right? A total of 60. That means that to create that perfect loop, frame 0 and frame 60 are the same, but you're rendering 0 to 59 because 0 to 60 is 61.
0 is a thing.
Yeah.
Like the numbers on a frame, it's kind of just like the frame's name. One of them happens to be named 0, unless you choose to start your timeline at 1, if that makes more sense to your brain. But
yeah, usually I call them Randy, Tammy, Jerome, Alphonse. Yeah,
it's just that's a little harder to keep track of once you get more than like 3 or 4.
Sure, I guess for some people. But yeah, so that's I wanted to cut in because we're talking about frame numbers. That sometimes, depending on what you're doing, you will have a number of frames, and then design-wise, you got to play inside that number, that number of things, right? So, like, what's this one rotating at?
So this, again, this was built for sort of a simulated gamer look, so I didn't have to be super tight about this. This one is, okay, so it's 1 second 16. So if I were to change that to frames, which, by the way, control or command clicking on your little time code there is how you change between those. I'm at 39 here.
Okay.
But then when I actually used this, I knocked it down to 12 frames per second because it looked better. So you could cut that number in half, because I would probably rather actually export this at 12. That makes sense?
Yeah. And so, just so that people know, you may not have control over what frame rate things are going to be played back at. You must respect the place it's going and the way that it will be displayed, especially if something is, for example, being pushed into a kind of overlay graphic system where it will receive dynamic data and then it'll come back. Like those frame rate mismatches or whatever. And while I'm streaming it, I'm a true gamer, so it's 4K 60 frames a second, that type of thing. Like, and I wanted it to be 12 frames a second. Well, then you need to be making sure that when you're actually exporting the 60 frames a second, that those are like hanging out frames.
Yeah,
right?
Which of course we would use our old friend posterize time effect to bring that down. Looks like I actually set these at 8 as they drop. So these coins are posterized to 8 frames per second in this little dropping thing that I built. And then it looks like I actually exported at 23976 because again, I built this for a film. So I wasn't being super mindful of your frame rates. But if you play it over the stream, I don't know. Does it look choppy?
Well, that's the weird thing, because 24 and 30, we're not going to have clean divisions. So that's
Yep.
the other thing, right? Like, when you're working on this stuff, make sure that you are using frame rates that will match with where this is going to be used. So if you know the stream environment, like the thing that it is capturing, you want to standardize down, say,
Yeah.
I'm bringing in 30 from the camera, I'm bringing in 30 from my assets, I'm outputting 30. 30's across the board, baby. You're going to be much happier. Okay, please proceed with that. Guys, if you love that math tangent, you're going to love the part about codecs and compression coming up.
Well, I mean, most of that stuff, it's not super exciting, but it becomes very important for this.
Yes.
And yeah, if you don't kind of know how to think in frame rates, we've kind of talked about this before too. So I knocked this down to 8 frames per second, for example, which works great if you're going to 24. But if I were exporting this at 30, 8 is not a great choice because that does not 30 does not divide evenly by 8. So I would then want to change these to probably 10, for example. So
always remember your factoring times.
Yeah.
What is that? That's what, grade 6 or something? I don't know. Depending on where you live.
Yeah, couldn't tell you. I do. So I actually have no real-time preview right now. Something about this kind of hung up. So I'm only watching the stream for my reference, which is a good 25 seconds behind. But, I'll make some attempts at catching coins again if we want. I don't know if there's anything else that would be of interest here on this frame to look at. I mean, it's mostly a design. There's a little bit of movement in the background.
Actually, please do, because the kind of subtle undulating waves back there, I think some people do struggle with those in a lot of ways. So what's going on with those gradients, just in case people are wondering?
So let's go ahead and strip some of this stuff down so that we can really see what's going on back there. So there is, there's just an image from Unsplash or something like that. And I believe, let's just see what all is going on here. There's a fair amount. Good old turbulent, turbulent displace. Our old friend Turby. That we have used many times, and it gives just a nice little undulation back there. I don't think this looks particularly great when you isolate it and look at it this way, but when you're covering everything up and you're just using this as a texture, then you can use that just fine. And as we have gone into before, again, I didn't do it here because I only needed this to live for about 8 seconds. But this is one of the many effects where you get an evolution sort of rotation style control, and you can cycle that. So you could turn this, even though this is kind of a very abstract kind of, woobly sort of swimmy animation, you could make this cycle itself at exactly the frequency that you want. And again, you'd probably want to be mindful of your frame rates there. And above that, again, I'm not going to promise that any of this would be actually loopable, because that's not how I built it. But there's a lot of pretty subtle here, so I don't know how well it's going to show up on the stream. Just kind of these like slowly growing shapes there. And that's the thing with this kind of stuff. Like, it can be almost still, but a little bit of movement like this goes a really long way when you're basically just making wallpaper, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't want it to be super wacky in your face the whole time. You want it to be just barely alive. And then you're going to be 100% in whatever sort of the limitations of the platform you're using are. A lot of them can't use an animated background. Or, you'd have very strict limits about the size of that background. And so this, even just exporting a few seconds of this, may be more visual complexity than you're going to be able to get in a lot of platforms. But
yeah, and I guess keeping in mind that if you're planning, okay, I'm gonna have a stream of me and I'm playing this video game, and you're increasing a lot of the processing, layers on layers on layers of decoding and recoding and encoding and blah blah blah. that are happening. So you want to keep it pretty simple. So good. I think that covers off some of those ideas that'll be helpful to people. The animated background does serve a very important purpose. There's a technical one that is pretty useful. It tells you if the stream has frozen or not, if the other elements happen to lock. So
that's
for
very
example,
true.
if you are playing something and that happens to screen lock, or your camera happens to screen lock, if the background is animated, that machine continues running. People know it's not dead when they look at it. So that's, anyway, let's, Kyle, we're going to cut over to my screen and get into that.
Yeah, let's burn it up.
Let's get into the hot zone. So let's say, for example, you wanted to create the hot seat. Welcome to the hot seat. This would be kind of an interstitial type of segment. This is one of the more complex versions of this idea that we could do. I figured we would probably let's do the hardest one, and everything else will follow, right? So the thing that we want to do or make is to break down the type of scene that we want to produce, break it into its constituent layers, and then figure it out from there. So if we want to put someone into the hot seat, step one, we need the person. So I have selected this green screen personal Adobe stock person. Now, it doesn't matter that I keyed it really bad, because generally, if you're going to be doing chroma keying using the streaming software, it's going to be pretty bad anyway. Yeah. So assume in your mind that it will be trash. And assume that your lighting situation might not be ideal. Mine is not here. Lots of real difference in the green. The chroma is not uniform in here. Assume those. Assume the worst, right? Therefore, if you're going to be doing stuff with it, don't bother cleaning it up super good, because you want to practice the way you play. So that's the person, right? Let's dig into some of the others in here. We know, for example, I want this to start with a fireball. So we need that. And I need to be able to see through that, because if it's going to be on the front, I got to see through it. Therefore, if we go into the fireball itself, kind of like that. Within this space, right, I'm seeing a lot of fireball, right? You can chop away. You want to see the checkerboard if this has to be alpha. If your particular streaming software has the ability to do blending modes, many do not. Many of them are alpha or nothing, right? Yes, question from Kyle.
We've used the word alpha a couple times. Have we actually defined that for people?
No, we have not done that.
Okay.
So, pixels. Where's my panel? Window. Info. Give me that info panel. So we're going to just dock the info panel right over here. Hopefully people are seeing that. RGBA. So the R, red, G, green, B, blue, A, alpha. Meaning how opaque or transparent any given pixel is. These are the 4 flavors of pixel available to us. And within those is an amount of depth. So how many levels of R's or B's or G's or A's do we get? That will give you the final output of any one pixel. For example, this one pixel, 93, 53, 36, 114. Why is this important? Why are we saying it? Right? Everyone is probably scratching their head. Evan, this is some nerd stuff. I'm here to be a true gamer. Get away from me with this. Well, the reason is that depending on how you're exporting it and how this is going to be used, they don't all have the same fidelity of these numbers. So just to throw it out there for people who are wondering, I'm going to make an adjustment layer over top of this. I'm going to deploy the posterize effect on this, because I think this explains it pretty well, and I crank this level down, in this case, to 2. I'm allowing 2 levels per channel, on, off. Beep, 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 beep. Meaning, you could have red is on, blue off, green off. I could have all of them on. I could have all of them off. The combination of all of that means 8 colors. 2 channels equals 8 colors. What? Kyle, that's crazy. This is the number 2, not the number 8. Get away from me. So that is something to sort of be aware of with channels, and I'm exporting it this bit depth and this bit rate and whatever. What does it mean? Well, the more levels of those switches that can be on or off, the more interesting the thing is going to look, because it's got the depth of the stuff across. Does that make sense? People in the chat, let me know if that sounds crazy, Giant Town, or not, but we're going to move on. Oh, no, we're not going to move on yet, because while you may have high number of channels in the R's, G's, and B's, you may have only two on or off in the A.
Yes, that's really important. It depends a lot on the format you're exporting to, but and again, I don't really have much of a preview right now. At the bottom of your composition panel, there's a little selector where you can show each channel one at a time. And typically you're going to see alpha information as white to black, and it has shades of gray, but a lot of the formats you might export to specifically for streaming may not be able to show anything in between. So it's all or nothing.
Yeah. So I've called up the project settings so you can see here the bit depth, 8 bits per channel. What does that mean? Well, that's the number of switches that we've got to click, 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 put them on, put them off, right? And so that's why we end up with this. In terms of the rest of the stuff, never mind. That's not for today. So those are different. That's a problem for a different day. But in our case, if I wanted to send this alpha out, I began with this image of fire right here. I've isolated it. I did a little bit of masking to make sure that I'm following only the one burst of fire as it goes. I've trimmed this down, so I've only got the one fireball going through. Fire is beautifully captured in a nice slow rolling, in this case 25 frames per second, but it's been slowed down artificially. I need to speed that bad boy up. So in here, I have time remapped it so that I can get the fa-whoosh exactly how I want. And I need to make this transparent. How are we going to do that? How could we?
I bet I know.
Oh, dude. I got ways and means, Kyle. I'm gonna switch it up on you. We'll see.
Okay, good.
So here's way number one. I'll give you way number one. We start with a black and white. You know, it's got the black background. In here, we would just set it to add and whatever, and we have a good time. If we know that we have to remove the alpha, then it's the dark parts that I know I want to make transparent. I will be deploying the shift channels. I'll reset that to how it comes in. And by default, alpha is alpha, red is red, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to say, take the alpha from the Luma. Now, what that has done is it's saying anything that is black, that is going to be transparent, alpha to Luma 1-to-1, the Luma to alpha 1-to-1. Anything that is super bright, you will be super opaque. That kind of works for fire, right? Kind of works for fire.
Yeah.
This doesn't look particularly good. So you kind of want to tweak it up with some curves. I'm going to go ahead and reset that curves. And let's just start by tweaking our alpha. Well, I'm going to crank the alpha like this. Maybe I want to clamp the dark parts like that so I don't have a lot of the sooty, smoky parts that are going on back there. But the other thing you're going to notice is that the color kind of changes a little bit when we do this type of thing because the darkness is out. So you may end up having to come back here, come into your RGB and say, well, let's crank that up a bit. Let's crank that down a bit. Let's make it a little bit brighter. Oh, I'm losing a lot of that red. Okay, well, I got to put some of that red back in. So I'll throw some red back in. Or maybe you can get some red back in by taking some green and some blue away. And this is the sort of thing that you have to tweak and get exactly how you want so that when this is put over top of something else, it's feeling a lot better. So there we go. That's way number one. Kyle, was that the way you were thinking of?
Yeah, probably more or less, yeah.
Okay. I've got a second way.
I think that's how I'd approach it. Of course, you could, if you can't dial in the color of something once you've made it into a matte, you could use it as the matte for another copy of itself that isn't so affected heavily.
Exactly. Bingo, bango, ha-ta-ta. I'll show you that method right now. So let's say we've got the fireball. I make a duplicate of the fireball. So here's a second fireball. And I'm going to mess with its kind of brightness levels like this. Quick curves change. And maybe it would make more sense if I just tinted that down so that you can see kind of black and white what's going on with that. And I'm going to set the bottom one to look at its other friend and say, as a matte layer, I point the track matte up there. I make sure that this is on the Luma, the little sunshine. Sunshine means Luma. And so it's looking at the black and white value resultant of this. Therefore, I can individually tweak what I want the alpha to be by tweaking the luminance of the buddy. Therefore, I get the holes the way I want. I did it. We have the holes exactly the way we want. And then if I exported this as the layer, if this is going out, then we simply have to make sure that we go into, here we go. We're getting into the real nasty part here. We're going to add to the render queue. Render queue is what you want. Where's my camera? Render queue is what you want. Now, why do we want one instead of the other, right? Well, the media encoder is more for external facing things. So if you're pushing this out for it's going to be delivered in its final form, that goes away over the media encoder. Your H.264s, your whatever it is, right? The final form's media encoder.
Deliverables.
Your deliverables. Yeah. The ones that you're going to pick up in your beak and drop down someone's chimney. That's where deliverables come from. So we will instead be using the render queue because that is more for intermediate files. That's for the things we're going to have a big file size, right? We're going to get into it. And the reasoning behind that is because we do not want an H.264 at all. No. Evan,
why not? Isn't that the best format for everything?
It is the best format for a lot of things. In our case, we want a less compressed version of the thing. So we will most likely, if you're on a Mac, you'll probably be using a QuickTime version of this. And in fact, I would really recommend in the output module, just use high quality with alpha or lossless with alpha. These are kind of the two that you want to go to. Now you go to the high quality with alpha, we click on that, and you can see right here, the format is QuickTime. That's the container, the box it's going to go in. The video output channels is RGB plus alpha, right? RGB plus alpha is what you want. Or RGB if you really must do it that way.
I must.
Okay, so it could be RGB, could be just alpha, but we want both, RGB plus alpha. Millions of colors plus, sure. Trillions of colors plus, whatever. Don't worry about that for now. The really hyper important one is RGB plus alpha. Now, critically, you may not see those words. Those are, you must see those words, but if you don't see them, it may be because the codec is not currently set to something that has that. So I think if I go Apple ProRes 422, a beautiful codec, a wondrous codec. How much more fidelity could you want? 422, that's 422 somethings. No, that's only 3 digits. You need the 4th heat. You need the 4 digits. That's why we need to go down to the Apple ProRes 44444, right? That's 4s across the board, baby. So that you've got the 4 channels represented RGBA right there. So Kyle, I see this is really sending you.
I hope. I hope your little like NBC chime makes stuff like this more memorable for people.
Yeah, I hope so. So now the option for RGB plus alpha is open. Okay, Kyle, we did it. We solved it. The forums can be closed. We can delete all the old posts, baby. This is all you need. Yeah. So this is what you want, right? If it looks RGB plus alpha, we are in the Apple ProRes 444. It's not a particularly lossy kind of codec. It is a codec. It's not uncompressed, but it's not very compressed. And
lossy bad, for the record.
Yeah, lossy bad.
Losing things, no fun, right? So you don't want lossy.
I hate losing stuff. So in this case, we want it to be easy to unpack, right? Oh, we want to just throw the things everywhere, right? Make it easy to unpack so that the encoder, the streaming software, will be able to just imagine it's unpacking a box and you haven't packed the box very tightly. And so your stuff can be thrown everywhere. I hope
it's like an unboxing video, right?
Hey, oh, there we go. Yeah. So you can also just disable audio output. You don't need that. Right? Get rid of that.
If you put it into compressed a container, it's like that crappy plastic blister pack that you like slice your hand open trying to get into, right?
That's it.
Nobody likes that.
Don't hurt your fingies, right? Make sure that you leave it uncompressed. And so that's what you want to be sending out. Once you've sent them away, then we can open up our streaming software of choice. Ours happens to be OBS. It's a very popular one. So let's get in there, Kyle, and we're going to talk a little bit about being in the hot seat while I sit in the hot seat. If anyone has any questions about all that stuff that we just talked about, if you don't necessarily need to do the alpha separation, if you're coming from an environment like what Kyle just showed, You see the checkerboard, the alpha is there,
Yeah.
right? Even though sometimes it's a black background, if you see the checkerboard, which if you're not seeing the checkerboard, it's this little button. Give me that checkerboard, baby. And that is telling you the A is there. If you're really not sure, if you really don't trust it, open up your info panel and you'll want to see an A of 0. And you can see even here in mine, an A of 1 out there at the corners, Kyle.
Oh no.
What a naughty thing that is.
You better crunch that thing a little bit more.
Exactly. So I tweak that thing. That 1 goes down to 0. The eyes may deceive, but the info panel believes, right? It has everything you need to know. Trust.
Of course, you can always take your export, bring it right back into After Effects, and put it over some other content, put it over a variety of weird colors. That way, it kind of helps you see things like that sometimes.
Trust the numbers. Trust in the numbers. Okay. Subtle plug for the Election Profit Makers podcast. So trust the numbers, they say. Okay, so in the hot seat, we have those layers represented: the fireball, the frame, the flames, the camera source that's coming in, and then the background of fire. Background of fire, that's nothing. That's whatever. That's just a video, whatever, right? The camera as it comes in, if you're using OBS, you want to come into the filters. Filters is what you want. And then you add to this, you add a filter, and you're going to add the chroma key or the color key filter, something to do some keying. And then you can tweak in. I've just chosen green. This is the result from my very bad background. Nailed it, right? You can tweak the settings. Similarity, how close to green is it? This is a pretty high number. I'm not going to lie. You can kind of see how similar or not similar things are. Yeah, we're really cranking on that. And then there's some spill kind of correction, suppression going on. And the smoothness is sort of fuzzing it a little bit. So if you want to kind of feather that, you may be more familiar with the same type of settings, but it's pretty similar inside of After Effects. The same ideas are there. Okay, so once those are dialed in, boom, you're done with that. That is fine. That's fine and good. It's exactly as nice as it needs to be. I personally kind of crop in from the edge, right? So I can slice away those parts that are not helpful to me. You can in OBS, you do that just by holding down Option and cropping it away. That's totally fine. But you see I'm hitting the walls and I'm doing a bad job. It's fine. Because, as we discussed earlier, the frame is our best friend for helping hide some of those crimes. If I cropped this in tighter with a frame, we wouldn't have to worry about my terrible green screen placement and size and all that, right? Totally fine. So, and again, the alpha boundary of this, very simplistic, right? There's not a lot going on. This is a simple kind of ramp plus colorama and then racking the phase around to make this happen, looping it up. It looks great. And the fireball. Let's talk about the fireball here, because the fireball comes on every time we jump to the hot seat. Like that. Why does it come on every time? Because in all of your streaming softwares, you will find an amount of information about what do I even do when this comes on. So in this case, all the other ones are set to loop. This one is not set to loop. This one is don't loop me. And show nothing when playback ends. Get it out of there. Clear the deck, right? Stop remembering that you had that file. Stop rendering it. Get it away from me, right?
There's almost a little bit of very simple programming tied to each of these things because you're kind of giving them an action of some sort.
Exactly. Now, others you may find have like an in, hold, and out type of behaviors. You really want to explore those behaviors and dissect how the program expects you to send the stuff. Especially in this case, restart playback when source becomes active. The source becomes active when the scene becomes active, and that's why it goes fafwoosh, right, every time. Every time we cut to this scene, is coming up, right? That's why the action happens, because of that directive. So important to keep that in mind. You can tweak the speed and whatever. There's a lot of stuff. But we come down even further, and you're going to see two funny little buddies down here. Apply alpha in a linear space and the YUV color range. Now, if you're using things with a pretty wide range, you probably want to say full. If you're compressing them more, then you'll use them at limited. You will most likely just leave it at auto. It will figure it out because you have that information is encoded in the file that you've sent out of the render queue. The file knows, the software knows, they're talking to each other with the metadata. Everybody's happy. So far, so good, I hope. And then apply alpha in linear space is an interesting quandary. We didn't talk much about linear versus logarithmic spaces, but again, this is a way of encoding the information. Is 0 to 100 the scale, or does that mean a ramping up of things? So if you're doing maybe more advanced sending of things, you may be having alpha in linear space rather than a logarithmic space. So just keep that in mind. If your alphas in here don't look the way they look in After Effects, you probably have to check this little button. If you're finding like, I don't remember those parts being so opaque or so transparent, that's the button you want to look for, because I sent it in linear. This is being understood as non-linear, anything not linear. I click that, it's going to correct all of those things that we have assumed about the file as we sent it out. So just like we want to get the frame rate 30, 30, 30, make sure that you are getting your color spaces linear, 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 whatever. Standardize.
Even if all of that was just like a bunch of gibberish to you, if nothing else, you should take away from this, leave yourself some time to test this stuff before you need to use it.
Oh, that's true, Kyle. And if you remember nothing else, remember boom, bing, boom, the sound of color. Kyle, we're going to go back to your screen so I can take a breath for a minute. I feel like I really went crazy there.
Yeah, we need to cool things back down a little bit.
Yeah, let's get out of the hot zone. I'm burning
I've
up.
got the perfect thing to cool us down, Evan.
Splash of cold water that is my face.
So I'm assuming that I'm back up here.
You're back up.
All right. So every good stream needs some like custom memes, right? And so here we are. I grabbed a couple of screen captures of Evan from our last show and just got him in, a few slightly different facial positions here, right? And this color is 100% just here for my visibility. And, I wasn't super careful about this. Most of the time you're seeing this stuff like pretty small. And so making the perfect cutout doesn't usually matter tremendously, right? So this is just here so that I could kind of see, like, did I have a little bit of extra, whatever right here that I maybe need to clean up? That's it. So this, I don't think it's uncommon to make these, fairly simple but animated little elements, whether they're like custom Slack emojis or for streams like this. So I took these elements and I brought them over here into After Effects, and I drew this little custom, I think this is some strawberry ice cream.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Skibbity ice cream.
Yep, we gotta cool us down from the heat. So this, I don't know your ice cream preferences, Evan, but I thought strawberry was probably a flavor you would like.
Yeah. I'm the withered triplet of the Neapolitan ice cream.
So, I just drew this one thing here, and then I just used a little bit of our old friend CC Bendit, which is a pretty simple effect. You just give yourself like a start and end point, and then you can bend something around like this, right?
That's working really well, actually.
Yeah, and so even without any tweening here, just sort of a little simple back and forth, you got kind of a little dancing ice cream thing, right? And obviously, you're going to want to add Evan's face onto this. And so we've got, straight Evan's face right here, and then we just change to that other frame as we wiggle back and forth here, right? Maybe fix that one just a little bit. Yeah, and so we can create this little dancing Evan ice cream wink right here that we could export to use as, whatever kind of custom emote that we want to be using here.
Kyle, it looks like I've become some kind of God Emperor of Dune out here.
Yeah. So I was originally a little torn here. I had you kind of up top, but that felt more like you were turning into some kind of slug creature. And so this felt a little more, a lot of people use that. Pretty sure it's a chocolate ice cream that has like a little smiley face on it. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I was going for here. So,
Well,
I mean,
it's beautiful, whatever.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and export this for our use here on this stream or any other stream, right? Now, you said I had a max of 60 frames, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I have created this at 30 frames per second.
Ooh,
and
not only do you have a maximum of 60 frames, you have a legal obligation to be exactly 60
exactly
frames
60. Well, so I need to be at 60 frames per second?
Yeah, 60. No,
Okay.
60 frames total, actually.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me get you that. I think it's 30 frames per second, 60 frames total.
So I have to be 60 frames long.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
punishable by
all right.
I want to say errors.
So, that gives me a good opportunity to do something here. So I've got these, I need to extend this a little bit here. So let me drop one more, and this is just a little trick in case people don't know it. You can grab a group of keyframes and Alt or Option to kind of accordion them out like this. Oh, I need to go one beyond. And so now I'll just line this stuff back up. And then grab each of these, drag those out. And now we should have our same, yep, perfect. Just slowed it down a little bit. So if I go ahead and trim this, we are at 30 frames per second. We're exactly 60 frames. And now I can export this thing for our use. So in a lot of cases, you need to export this as a GIF, which just to be quick about it, GIF is a very old format, and it's pretty bad, honestly. It's just, it has endured for reasons that no one is entirely sure of. I also imagine I probably built this a little larger than what we might want to use it as. So I'm going to take this real quick and just drop it into another composition. Let's size this down to maybe like, I don't know, 400 square. Does that feel maybe more appropriate?
I think so.
Okay. So this is about the size that it will be. That feels better. So I can export this using my render queue, but I don't believe that there's any way to get a GIF directly out of After Effects. You can get one out of Media Encoder. I don't know if you can pull alpha that way. I'm going to point out a little tool that I like to use directly here in After Effects called GIF Gun, which is further proof to my theory that it should be a g, not a j sound.
Yeah.
Also,
it's gun.
Yeah, it's not graphics. This is a third-party tool. It does cost something, maybe like $30, I forget. But this allows you to export GIFs directly out of After Effects, and you can add alpha to them if you so desire. Though apparently clicking that checkbox right now is going to, there we go, take a second.
Yeah.
So I am going to go ahead and export this so that I can do that. Sure, go ahead. I really like this as just a very quick and easy way to be able to send things out of these. Even sometimes it's just nice for like sending a little sample of something to a client or to someone you're working with. So I have a little GIF right here, and if I put this in our shared folder, let me give it a meaningful name, Evan Emoji. I'll give that to you, and you should be able to probably load that up. And while you are working on that, I will also show a different route that you could go to export this and have a little more control over it.
Wait, what should I do with that thing? Like put it in the switcher?
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Sure. Okay, I'll see about replacing my face with that while you do that other thing.
Okay, perfect. So let's say that you don't want to pay for this, or you just feel like you need a little more control. You could also, I'll choose that high quality with alpha that Evan was talking about before, and I'll just export this as a video file. And then I'm going to bring this over to Photoshop, because Photoshop actually still has a lot of export options for this. It's going to know that this is a video, and so you get a little timeline here, and so we get, same thing. But if you look under File, Export, Save for Web Legacy, because again, GIF is like a 35-year-old format and it's real bad. Um, but you now have the ability to save GIFs right here. And one other thing about GIFs is that you end up needing to do a lot of optimization. Okay. In fact, this one that I just exported with GIF Gun is 2.07 megabytes. And so for some services, that's not going to work. So we would need to optimize this. And one of the ways that you might do that is by being mindful about the colors. I actually have a fair amount of colors in here because there's all this dithering, and I've got some variety of colors on Evan's face here. So I could selectively knock these down and deal with the quality here. There are some good online services like easygif.com that you can toss GIFs up to optimize them that way as well. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But a lot of times, honestly, it's just trial and error to kind of, keep seeing like, and well, here's a good tip. Let's say that I'm going to try a handful of versions to sort of see how low I can get the file size while still retaining as much of the visual fidelity, right? And so I would make each of those and then sort of append that file name with enough information so that I know what I did. Like quality 80, quality 75, if you're like, add those things to each one, and that way maybe you have to present these options to someone else. Maybe you have to prove to someone else who doesn't understand any of this, like, yes, I can get this GIF down to 1 meg, but this is what it looks like. Understand how bad it will be because you're insisting on too much content in this format that doesn't handle it.
Yeah, and if, you were wondering like, well, why this format, right? And it is the ability to select of your own palette that is really powerful about this, because we could have a picture of a sunset. We don't need a bunch of the colors. We can throw a lot of them out, so we can do more with 256 of my choosing of colors, right, that are going to be in there. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And, someday everything on the internet will be vectors or whatever. So we don't
you can do like SVG animations and stuff, I believe. And then there's platforms specifically for this stuff. But we mentioned it a little bit earlier that some formats do not allow you to have partial alpha, partial transparency, and GIF is that thing. It's all or nothing. So you can't have like a glow in this that fades off because it's just your alpha pixels are all or nothing.
Yeah. Hard-edged pictures only. Which honestly has created a kind of aesthetic of its own, right? Like
bad?
Yeah, a bad aesthetic. But that is like, it's a limitation of the technology, therefore it becomes an aesthetic of the space. So I think that's maybe something also, as Kyle, we're closing it out here, so we'll go to the two shot here. So
can we leave your little animated Evan up on the two shot though?
Oh well, no, I have to put him up on the two shot.
Excuses.
Yeah, I know.
That's okay. I know we're close to the end.
Look, no, he keeps popping up. It's like I'm stuck in that Jurassic Park thing. No, get off my screen. I'm going to stop doing that. All right.
I love it. We have to use that on every episode now.
Yeah, we'll work them into the regular thing. But the thing I wanted to say was, you may become frustrated that, these various limitations of my bit rates and my bit depth, and I can't get it to be as like good as I want. Well, the solution for a lot of that is to simply lean into the aesthetics of the space and to know that, you can try to force this to be the most broadcast, beautiful CNN level types of graphics. I don't know why I said CNN. They might be mid. I can't really say. I've not kept up on who's winning the broadcast Emmys for graphics. Kyle, you won one of those, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for broadcast graphics, but
okay. But yeah, like that lean into the aesthetics of the space. Don't pressurize yourself to try to be the most beauteous, flowing stuff. And a lot of this is going to be limited by your switcher. That's why there are hardware encoders for switchers as well. So those are a much more powerful way of encoding stuff, and then it's just going to output one HDMI signal. If you're leaning on software to do it, you are going to be sort of always crunchitized by the limitations of software and heat and bandwidth. So be generous with yourself. Kyle, I want to thank you for being generous and being on the show with me as usual.
Always.
And anyway, that brings us to the end of the thing. I hope you learned something about creating streaming graphics and that you're going to create a whole bunch. You're all going to launch a whole bunch of really cool Dungeons and Dragons streams where you take improv prompts from the audience and, you got puppets on there and all that stuff. It's going to be great. Next week, we got another show for you. We're going to be back here 4 o'clock on Monday. If you want to send us questions. Oh, sorry. Today is Tuesday. It is next Tuesday. You will see our face. I know things. I'm Evan Abrams. This I do know. You find me on the internet at EC Abrams. He is Kyle Hammer, Kylosaurus Rex. You will find on the internet. And you can find Motion Design Hotline at motiondesignhotline.com, a real website for real people. And you can get the various files that we work on if you want to dissect them and have fun with that. I don't know. Anything else to say to people, Kyle?
Oh, I don't think so. Thanks, everybody, for watching, especially when we do super ridiculous things.
Well, they may be watching for that. So anyway, like I say, let us know if you have problems and we can help. We love to help. We love to do this. Hopefully it was helpful. Anyway, stay creative, be kind to each other, and we'll see you all around the internet. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.